So welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. We're really excited about this conversation. Darcia Narvaez is a professor of psychology emerita at the University of Notre Dame. She is the founder of the public and professional educational outreach project, the Evolved Nest Initiative, whose nonprofit mission is to share her science research into developing appropriate baselines for lifelong human wellness by meeting the biological needs of infants. This well-being baseline is imperative at this time as the United States ranks 41st out of 41 developed countries in public policies that support families, which really makes me very emotional. And so she has the Evolved Nest, which is also a wonderful book that I interviewed her about last fall, I think, or yeah. Um, and and check out her bio. I put the link in the chat, but she also has another one, Neurobiology and the Development of Human Morality, Evolution, Culture, and Wisdom, which was chosen for the 2017 Expanded Reason Award from over 300 entries. So today we're going to talk about this book, which I have notated, every margin. I really marked this one up. Yeah. Restoring the Kinship Worldview, Indigenous Voices introduced 28 precepts for rebalancing life on planet Earth. Welcome, Darcia, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Alison. Wonderful to be with you all on this time of transformation. And we all need to pull together in the same direction to ensure that life on the planet moves in a flourishing direction instead of the destructive direction we're in.
Yes, thank you for saying that. So I'm Alison Cebulla, and I am a founder of Tend Collective, and I'm joined here also by Bree, who's also founded the Tend Collective with me, and Danielle is an advisor. She's here on the call. And we founded Tend Collective because what we were noticing was that care seemed to be missing from workplaces in the United States. And the reason we're so excited to bring Darcia in to talk with everyone is that it's the workplaces that we're experiencing that are so toxic don't exist in a vacuum. And they're, a part of the ecology of the social ecology of the United States that includes neglect from childhood that then goes all the way into our workplaces. And I really appreciated, Darcia, how you link those things together so often in your book, that the neglect in childhood, it's related to how we treat our peers and our natural resources.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So this is the work we're trying to do at Tend, to look at all of these things and see if we can create more caring systems. So thank you all for being here and hopefully co-creating that reality with us, and it will ripple out. So we are at an inflection point right now. Like we're acutely feeling the effects of the climate crisis. We're seeing news of forced migration, and that's really, touching a lot of us. Mass species extinction. We're also experiencing the threat of fascism in places all over the world, genocide, significant population level mental health crises, really high rates of medication use in the United States and addiction. So we're seeing all of it and we're really feeling all of it. And so I wanted to start by talking about how we got here, what we're experiencing, and then kind of looking at how the Kinship Worldview offers solutions. Now we can put those into practice. So I wanted to start with a concept that you bring up in chapter 7 on gender role fluidity called Wedico, which I hadn't heard before. And it's defined as a psychic virus or aggression against other living things to conquer, exploit, and ultimately destroy them. Could you tell us a little bit about this term and why it's associated with colonialism?
Well, I learned this term from Jack Forbes, who talks about Columbus and Other Cannibals is one of his books, where he brings up the Wetico virus. And it's something that the Native Americans noticed in the Europeans explorers when they came. They They thought, What's wrong with these people? They see with only one eye. Why are they so soulless? They don't see the livingness, the sentience all around them. They just want to grab and I have an ancestor, a conquistador ancestor, who was one of these people, and they just want to, ravage, take and take and take. Part of the reason for that is they're all indebted. All these folks, like Hernan Cortés, were worried about debts that they had. They're, enslaved themselves to the systems that the Romans set up around Europe and in that area of the world, and that's just been expanded to us. So we're all in a kind of a, I guess, maybe a few thousand years worth of being slaves to a system that just wants to control and extract from all of us. And that's what then we act upon ourselves towards others, because our spirit, our uniqueness, our humanness, our humanity just wasn't nurtured from the beginning. So what do you have? Well, you feel like the world is scarce. There's not enough, and you have to grab, right, what you can when you can, because when you're a baby, you're not nurtured in the evolved nest way. That's our heritage. You're going to feel an absence, always disconnected, and you're left alone to cry. You're left alone to sleep alone, and no one seems to be there. You're like a fetus for 18 months, right? And you need your needs met immediately for the brain to grow well. Otherwise, you feel, and if you survive, then you're going to have a kind of a warped spirit, because you were not nurtured in the critical times for neurobiological development. We could talk about all the different systems that are coming online and setting their parameters. And so you have a hole in your heart, a hole in your spirit, and you've got to fill it somehow. And so you're going out there to, and you treat others the way you were treated, like it's, instead of
Yeah.
thous, instead of, sacred beings that are unique and beautiful. You're treating them like an object that you can use to fill that hole.
Mm, that resonates so much. I am a person in recovery from addiction myself, 20 years actually. And I always call it just a black hole. There's right, no amount of anything that could fill it, no amount. And it's almost like we're living that as a whole society.
Yeah.
Like there's just not enough that we could consume. It's never enough.
Right. Yes, I think that's right. So we transfer that to the way the Breaking the Cycle film, our little 6-minute film, talks about the cycle of competitive detachment, where you undercare for the young. Then they have neurobiological, illness, and they become adults who aren't well, they're not wise, and they keep this cycle going of not meeting basic needs of everyone. And everyone feels so stressed out, a rat race, right? Instead of our heritage, it's a cycle of cooperative companionship where you provide for the needs of the young, especially because that has long-term effects. But everyone's needs are met, and you have well-regulated systems, neurobiological, um, endocrinological, spiritual, cognitive, emotional, all well coordinated, and then you become a well and wise person, and you keep the cycle going. And that's why we're here. Our ancestors knew that stuff. We call it the wellness informed pathway, but we're on a trauma
Mm.
inducing pathway now, and we
Uh,
think that's normal. So our whole baselines for what we think is normal for being a human being is, oh, it's normal to be miserable, it's normal to be competitive, it's a dog eat dog world. No, that's not how our ancestors lived.
Right. Um, I love that so much. We have normalized a really bizarre reality, and um, maybe you could. Well, I was gonna say maybe we could talk about what is the evolved nest? What are the best possible conditions, for a human being to come into this world and thrive? To kind of just even what are we talking about? What do we need?
Yeah, so we evolved to raise children together in a village, community of carers, because babies need 24/7 constant contact and responsive care since they're like fetuses until age 2 or so. So you want to meet their needs with an external womb experience. And that means arms. They're in arms, on bodies, because that's regulating the vagus nerve and all sorts of systems so they can stay calm, so that they have a good biochemistry for everything that's growing so quickly in different sensitive periods that come and go. And so it's soothing perinatal experiences, so the mother feels supported during pregnancy. She's relaxed. She's welcoming. The whole community is welcoming the child and supporting the mother. Birth is soothing. There's no separation after birth of baby from mother, and no painful procedures, no circumcision, no shots or whatever, ointment in the eyes, which is normal now for gonorrhea, even though the mother may not have it, and all sorts of things that hurt the baby, and then they're separated, and could go on and on about birth. And then there's breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding is really hard in advanced nations, high income nations, because there's so much talk against it, so much myth about formula is almost as good as breast milk. Oh, why did the
Darcia,
no?
did you know that formula companies lobby our Congress
Yeah.
to restrict paid parental leave?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Oh, I'm not surprised. Yeah, they want formula to be used, and how you do that, you make separate sleeping as norm, a crib. You know, you can't be in the same bed. Oh no. Whereas, the SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, is linked to formula use, but they don't tell you that. I mean, all the
Mm,
other factors, yeah, there's some factors, drug use in the parent or big fat pillows and stuff, but it's typical, it's formula use, it's babies being separated, because sometimes babies don't breathe. They stop breathing because they're still learning to breathe outside the womb. They don't have to breathe in the womb, right? And they need a lot of help and they need to be near the caregiver to get their heart rate, their respiration rate going correctly.
yes.
And sometimes babies don't breathe, and if the mom is right there, she knows. She's sensitive to it. The breastfeeding mother will not roll on the baby. That's a myth. And she will wake up, and because she'll know the baby stopped breathing, and she'll wake the baby up, and the baby will come back to life, essentially. So anyway, there's so many things to talk about.
Yeah. With the co-sleeping, so I have a master's degree in public health, and one thing that I learned working in public health, that's somewhat discouraging, is that oftentimes the recommendations given will be for the worst case scenario, just to make
Yeah,
sure like, oh, everyone's protected. But it's really interesting because typically you're only looking at one health outcome at a time. And the thing about public health outcomes in the US, at least, is that a lot of them are related to alcohol and drug use, which is when hurting your baby during co-sleeping is a problem, when there's alcohol and drugs involved. And so that recommendation, as far as what I've learned, was made because of those cases, but without necessarily looking at some of the health benefits. And a lot of public health issues are like that, which I find interesting. It's like even our scientific research, it continues to reinforce a cultural environment that's not relational.
that's right. Well, it's individualism run
Yeah,
amok, which
yeah,
comes from the Western worldview, from the Enlightenment. We're just all separated, we're kind of
yeah,
object to object, rather than everything's about relationship. We don't thrive without relationships. We're not ourselves until we're called out by relationship. And so that myth is so embedded in science, where the experimental protocols is you separate one variable and you look at this one thing and control everything else and say, oh yes, this really
yes,
matters, right? But wait a
yes,
minute, that's not how life works, right? So they don't
exactly.
look at the relationships very well. It's hard to do, right? So what you hear about is what's easy to measure. And what's easy to measure are these little tests, little surveys and little
Yes,
this or that.
yes,
And they don't look at the big picture because it's too hard. And then everyone gets the wrong idea that, oh, well, all this one thing matters, and those other things that we can't measure don't matter.
exactly. Sarah, you had a couple questions. We would love to hear from you.
Oh, I was hoping to get answers to those questions. Like I'm really curious, Darcia. One of my questions was, the kinship worldview is typically in most environments not the common worldview. And so, and as I heard you speaking about how difficult it can be to not treat others like it when that's the environment that you're already around. And so in your experience within this worldview, or as you're talking about this worldview, how do you keep yourself within that worldview as you're operating within these systems that are so toxic and yeah, in a nutshell?
Well, I try to be relationally mindful. I have a new blog at Substack called The Nested Pathway. And I just wrote this past Sunday, I post then, on relational mindfulness, because there was a study that came out on mindfulness training in schools with 25,000 students or something, trying to help them not be depressed or anxious. And the kind of mindfulness that's usually taught is, to think about your body and how you're feeling and that kind of thing, very analytical, individualistic mindfulness. And even the other kind of mindfulness where, I'm holding my pen, I'm in the moment, holding my pen. It's object related, but relational mindfulness is what pulls us out of anxiety, pulls us out of depression. It's being aware of this person, this uniqueness in front of me and relating, So when I'm in the world, I try to be present physically, emotionally, cognitively with the person I'm facing and try to pull them out, try to connect, try to say, how are you doing today? How are things? Look at how beautiful the sunshine is, or something. And, try to knit together again, that sense of all of us together. We're all in this together in any way possible. Now, there are systems like birth systems, they're so robotic and so oriented to efficiency that it's really hard to penetrate that, you got to get the baby out in 26 hours. All right, give more Pitocin, more fake oxytocin, and get that baby so distressed. And then we have to do a cesarean section, because the baby, it's insane. The system we have of efficiency. So capitalism is killing us because efficiency, money is the thing that's easy to measure again, right? Because the living beingness of our relationships is so hard to measure if you haven't been raised to perceive it, which is a right brain thing. A right hemisphere thing is right hemisphere grows more rapidly in the first couple years of life. And that's when you need all this attention of, face to face with lots of different people to grow your flexibility and your relational attunement and your relational mindfulness. And we don't do that for our young. And so they're kind of empty in that. They don't have all those skills built up. And so they feel, ooh, texting is easier. Give me a screen. It's so much easier, right? Because you don't have to know anything because you're manipulated by the screen, by the mechanisms that we put people into, our children. And
Well, the screen can't attune.
no, right. Well, it
So,
can know what you're looking at, right, and give you more of that. And what you're
right.
listening to, right? So
Okay, so
very
there is
big.
a form of attunement. Yeah, okay.
Not the good kind. So let me finish the nest. So I'll just go faster, right? Soothing perinatal experience, breastfeeding for several years. So we have a lot of evidence how important that is for long-term health and all sorts of things. Affectionate, lots of affection, positive affection, no punishment, no spanking. We have long-term effects, negative effects of that. Welcoming social climate for both mom and child throughout life. We all need this. We all need the affection throughout life. Free play, self-directed play, not organized sports. It's running around, playing chase, and being creative with others. Grows all sorts of wonderful things in the brain, capacities, control of aggression. Multiple adult caregivers of other caregivers as well who are nurturing responsive relationships so that baby's kept in the optimal arousal state. And then we all need mentors throughout life. Nature, immersion, and connection. We co-evolve with the natural world. It heals us. We need those relationships too. And then routine healing practices, because we get out of balance as human beings. We make decisions that aren't so great. And we get mentally unbalanced, physically unbalanced, relationally unbalanced, and we need help, daily help to have rituals or other things to get us back tuned in to the energies of the universe. That's what wisdom is about. It's being not caught up in fear, not caught up in ego, but being able to be present in a loving flow that then you can enhance the lives of others.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, I'm just absorbing that. Um, it's interesting. I want to comment on cultural differences. I have been traveling a lot recently, and it's good to get out of the US sometimes. And because we have normalized, I've noticed in the US, we all will go to a cafe by ourselves, and which is actually a good thing because we're trying to be around other people, but it's always to get more work done. We always have like a side hustle, right? So even if we did our regular day, it's like, oh, but now we have to hustle more and make more. And so everyone's just kind of like by themselves. And traveling around Europe, and I'm currently in Istanbul, Turkey, you don't see that. People go to cafes to meet with their friends, and they're meeting with their whole social circle. And you don't really see people take their laptop by themselves to a cafe here. And it's so interesting how everything is so much more centered around being social, but then even the city design is makes that happen. So, mixed use, dense mixed use. So there's a cafe in every neighborhood, residential. You don't have to get in your car and drive to a Starbucks in a strip mall here. And so people can just walk down the street and go hang out with everyone that they know in their neighborhood. So I think, in the United States, it's particularly like it's infected everything, every part of our society to make us individual islands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's assumed to be normal, right? And
Right.
especially in this country, yeah. In Paris, every neighborhood has a little cafe or
Yeah.
restaurant, a chef, a starred chef in it.
Yes.
It's amazing. Wow. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have really, our understanding of the world has really been narrowed. And
Yeah.
I spent half my childhood outside the country. So I came back and well, always puzzled about what's wrong with the world. There's so much injustice, so especially towards children. So that's my passion, is to try to bring back justice and love
Mm.
for the other.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that work. Um, so you have 28 precepts in your book, and I loved every single one. Like every chapter, I just really I really was like writing in the margins. Um, and I think a couple of the precepts that I especially liked, I think have to do with feeling like, well, what can I do? What can I put into practice? And so I really like non-materialism, because if that feels like something that I have control over, I can personally choose to prioritize relationships. Um, and I really also liked the chapter on responsibility emphasis. And that one really called to me because it was talking about rights versus responsibilities. And people are so obsessed with rights in the US, but you do hardly ever think about people thinking like, what do I owe my community? And how, what are my responsibilities to be a part of this society? And so I was wondering if you think that maybe we have, as a result of our collective authoritarian style of upbringing in our households, have a sort of learned helplessness in
Mhm.
terms of being able to show up and feel responsible.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it. Just think, in a naturalistic birth, the baby crawls up the mother's belly, reaches the breasts, and manipulates the nipple to start the milk letdown. Talk about feeling empowered. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
And then breastfeeding is at the direction of the infant, so that they're already in charge of their life, right? And that, psychotherapists like D.W. Winnicott said the child needs to feel omnipotent in those first 2 years. That's again because they're like a fetus, we know now. And the fetus expects things to be delivered immediately. And because the brain is growing so quickly, And if he doesn't get those things immediately, then the baby learns that they don't matter, that their efforts aren't worth it, that their feelings of expressing, their need, nobody comes when I cry, when I, gesture first, because late crying is a late signal.
Right.
And we expect crying, and that's why do you want your child to get distressed before you move in and help, right? That's crazy. And so the child learns, oh, I can't do anything, and nobody's going to help me, and I can't trust them, and I can't. The world is a dangerous, unworthy place, and I don't know if I can be here. And so they find some little area of ways to manipulate the parents, because that's the only way they get their needs met, and
Right.
they're wounded. There's just so
Yeah.
many wounds that they carry forward that takes so much effort as an adult to take off the Velcroed wounds all over you so you can let your spirit flow.
I was just talking about that with my colleague Bree, who's also here. I was noticing there was a article about the ACEs Aware program in California to help, and a new part of it is to help like teenagers. And the headline said something about helping teenagers heal. And it really broke my heart because I don't want children to worry about healing. That shouldn't be a part of childhood. Being wounded shouldn't be a part of childhood. It should be about playing and learning and experiencing and exploring. Like the fact that we're like, oh, let's help children heal. That's sick.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what do you think life's about? So it's like, misery again, right? It's
Yeah.
misery and adversity. This is all normal, and just put up
Yes.
with it. And, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is an impossibility. The bootstraps are at the back of the shoe, to pull the shoe on your foot. Uh, and yeah, it's the capitalism is doing this to us. It's the combination back in the Enlightenment period when they separated mind and body, they separated male and female, human and nature. Individualism, is the way you got to think in your mind. And we are all taught in school, it's your intellect, IQ, that's the thing you want to grow and train your baby to read because that's going to help them in school, which is the most important thing. But you don't learn how to be a human being in school, most schools. And you learn to shut down again your spirit, your emotions, your connection, your relation to the natural world, to other people. And then you get, pass the test and get an A. Wow, I'm so smart. And then we send them to Wall Street, these underdeveloped people whose brains don't finish developing until around age 30, right? Especially boys. Male brains grow more slowly. They mature, they have less built-in resilience. So baby boys really need a lot more nurturing, more play, more cuddling, more breast milk for longer. Anyway, we send them off to Wall Street, to high finance, to Madison Avenue to do all the advertising. They don't have their empathy systems developed fully, and they haven't been
Right.
nurtured to develop them anyway, but they're not done till around age 30. And we mentor them into being a wedicovirus person, right? Back to that.
Yes. What you're saying made me think of this book. Have you read the book Kids These Days by Malcolm Harris?
No, I know of it though. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he wrote another one that came out last year, Palo Alto, where he was trying to understand why there are so many suicides among his peers, which is millennials. But his first book was Kids These Days, about how we're raising children now to become good capitalists more than anything else.
Yeah.
And how our entire K through 12 system is designed to turn children into capitalists.
Yeah. How to make a buck. How are you
Yeah.
going to make a buck? Yeah.
For someone else who's wealthier than you and it's gonna,
Right. You're going to be a good worker. You have to be
Yeah.
a good worker first, and then someday you'll be a billionaire. Just do your, work at
Yeah.
McDonald's. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Amy, you had a question that I wanted to call on you, but you turned your camera off. Are you there? I will ask Amy's question. Um, what are some childhood routine healing practices? Oh, that's interesting because I just said, oh gosh, children shouldn't be healing. But this is something that you said, routine healing practices.
Yes, for everybody. Yeah. So, yeah, and that's in our ancestral context, which is hunter-gatherer society, hunter-gatherer civilization. It's been around it's still here mostly in Central Africa, but in different places in the world still. And they have ceremonies of joy and celebration and singing and dancing and pretty much every day. And then if there's something to grieve, they'll have a grieving ceremony or a healing ceremony if someone's not well, or if they all kind of feel unwell for some reason or out of sorts. Someone starts to be snippy, and then they'll have a ceremony because that means something's not right. So those kinds of ceremonies are really all communal. For us who are trained in individualism, it's hard to even find those ceremonies, right? So you have to almost develop your own personal ceremonies or your family ceremonies, things that work for you. So if you're feeling resentful, right, write it on a piece of paper and ball it up and throw it away or burn it, or things that help you let go in symbolic ways, rituals that help you move into a gratitude mindset, very helpful for being in the relational mode. So the traditions that religions have of praying before a meal and thanking, the creator for all the gifts there. I like to thank the animals and plants that are feeding me, that gave their lives for me. Um, and there's various things you can do before you drink the water to give it thanks and say to yourself, this is healing water, and spend some time energizing it with your hands, because we can do this. And then, then take a sip, then and be grateful for it. So to the relational mindfulness is also about all the living things around you, to be grateful to Mother Earth. And to have that attitude all the time is a healing attitude. It's a relational mindfulness attitude. I call it also a relational know-how. So,
Darcia, I have an example from last weekend. I went hiking and I had learned this practice from a Sufi teacher actually that I had in college, a guest speaker who said to always ask a mountain before you climb it or hike it.
yeah.
And I always do that now. I enjoy trail running and hiking. So I was on a mountain in Bulgaria last weekend and I made sure to thank the mountain for my passage.
Nice.
And not once, but twice this happened where I started to go the wrong way on a path and randomly somebody stopped me and asked me for directions so that I had to pull out my map and notice I was going the wrong way. It
Oh,
happened
wow, yeah.
twice.
Yeah. See,
And
we're
it
all
just,
connected. We're
yes,
all connected, and people are there, with signaling things. That happens to me a lot. Some
yeah.
stranger will say something and, oh, yes, right.
Yeah, yeah. And it just, I felt that the mountain was protecting me, saving me my time and energy from going down in the wrong direction, which probably could have added like another hour. I just felt so protected, like I was in that symbiosis. I think I'm seeing some nods, like we all know what that feels like. We've all been in those spaces where it feels like we're actually part of.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have
Part
to
of.
be open to it, right? So not shut down and just in your blinded orientation of one thing, right? Because people have done experiments on that. This one famous experiment at a seminary campus, they asked the participants in the study to prepare a sermon on the Sermon on the Mount, I think it was. And no, it's on the Good Samaritan. I think that was the Good Samaritan story is one of Jesus's parables where he says there's this man who's beaten up by the side of the road, and all these people walk by, and then the Samaritan's the only one that stops to help the man. And the Samaritan was, kind of an outcast group in Judea. Anyway, so these people were preparing a sermon, and then they had to give the sermon across campus in another building. And the experimenters put what's called a Confederate on the way someone was moaning on the sidewalk. And if they had a short time to get to the next building, people would walk around the person, step over the person to try to get to give their sermon. So when
Right.
you're single-minded about something, you can not see then and not perceive and not receive what's out there for you to, that's being communicated.
Absolutely. Um, so I'm wondering, and again, if any of you have questions, please feel free to put those or comments in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. What have you seen that makes you feel hopeful? Have you seen these precepts put into practice? And if so, what have you seen that's really working?
Hmm. I haven't actually gone around the world to to kind of analyze each one and say, where is that one working?
Yeah.
So I haven't really done that kind of analysis. I think in communities where people are listening to one another and working together for some common good, they tend to orient then this way to this more communal um, space and communal set of attitudes. Um, but it takes a lot of practice because a lot of us didn't get all those skills that we would normally have developed in the nested life way.
Yeah. Anyone here want to share something where they have seen something in their community? Sarah, do you want to share about this infant toddler program and how that maybe seems more relational?
Um, I am a mental health consultant for my Head Start agency here in Oregon. And so part of one of my professional plans was to complete this graduate program. And it just what you're saying, Darcia, or Darcia, if I'm saying it
Darcia,
incorrectly.
Darcia.
I'm just recalling my experience in that program, and it resonates so powerfully with what the kinship worldview and how we're supposed to see families and nurture that relationship with parent and child, and I'm also it's just a wealth of, and it's that community learning kind of model, which is also a very powerful tool. It's humility based, and it also makes me think of the nonviolent communication book by now I'm forgetting his name, but
Yes.
Alison, you're nodding your head.
Marshall Rosenberg.
Marshall Rosenberg. I wish the title was different because that can be
Yeah.
very off-putting for some individuals.
Yeah.
But it's so stepping out of the common language and ways of communicating that are so harmful and othering. And so I encourage you, if you're hungering for more education, and in my experience in that program, there were people from all over, and that was so beautiful as well. I really learned a lot from other voices. So thank you.
That's so good. Thank
There's
you,
also
Sarah.
a non-violent communication website. See if I can find it. Yeah,
Yeah,
the word nonviolent. Here, I'll put the thing in the Zoom chat right there. Yeah. So they have a lot of tools there, and how to learn how to, speak your truth without offending the other.
yeah.
Essentially.
And because you did mention that in your book, actually. That is because I think you said something where, because it's like, how do we make life more wonderful? Isn't that one of the main questions?
Oh yes, yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's what I really love about nonviolent communication, is that it's like, it's exactly what you're saying in this book. It's like, how can I see your humanity and prioritize the fact that we are two beings relating? And instead of how can I win? How can I make sure I get what I want and win? And then go over here and be lonely with my winnings.
Yeah, right. How can I enhance your life? And then we
Yeah.
mutually enhance one another. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a lot about the process too, because in nonviolent communication, you're saying how you feel and hopefully caring about how the other person feels. And so that's that's relational work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's easy if you grew up with it, but it's hard if you didn't. It's harder and takes some effort. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and so what is your vision for a kinship-based world?
Well, that's if you watch our Reimagining Humanity film, 12 minutes long. Reimagining
We can do
Humanity. That's the vision.
it.
So let's see if that's, I could put it in the website, in the chat, sorry. And that is, where we meet basic needs from the beginning and are humble to the needs of the other and not, but you're going to be in general, because your needs were met too. Imagining, oops, can't type and talk at the same time. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so how I envision it is we each work on our own calmness. And this is part of what's in the neurobiology book, Neurobiology and Development of Human Morality. The longest chapter was what to do if you weren't nested, essentially. And first you have to learn to self-calm and notice when your jaw is getting tight or you're, starting to hunch your shoulders, and take, steps to learn calmness and to move into calmness when those things happen. And then also build social joy, because a lot of us didn't have enough. So especially the young people now spend so much time alone and with screens, they don't have the, capacity to, just hang on and smile and touch and whatever, play. And so with my college students, I would play folk song games because I used to be a music teacher. And that's where you're playing a hunting we will go, a hunting we will go. We'll catch a little fox and put him in a box and then we'll let him go. And you're holding hands, you're singing, your vagus nerves getting stimulated for all good health. Because humming and singing does that, and you're moving and your body interaction, you're smiling, you're laughing. And then we would go teach those songs to kindergartners. And oh my gosh, the kindergartners would just get so enthused, play all these games, and the college students would realize, oh, life can be joyful. Because a lot of them, are on drugs too. It's like 4 out of 5 college students are depressed or anxious, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the way to get out of it. So if everyone could learn to play as an adult. And I say, if you didn't do that, go find a 1 to 6 year old and play with them. They'll expect you to be in the moment with them. If you're not, they'll stop playing with you. So you have to be there, and that'll grow your right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is going to help you be more empathic, more attuned, more flexible, more able to reach higher consciousness and get out of that ego and that pain and the despair that we routinely grow into people. So go play. And I see a world of a lot of playing, a lot of singing, a lot of dancing, and just having enough. You don't have to have more. You just need enough, right? So you can be together. That's what our ancestry are. Those who live in our ancestral context, hunter-gatherer societies, they spend all their time with each other and they love it. And they can't understand when anthropologists come and they want to go off to their little hut, could type up their notes or something, and they'll just kind of show up and move in and at 3 a.m. or whenever it is, and they assume that you want to be with people. They can't imagine you want to be alone ever. We have the opposite because we've been trained up to not feel comfortable too close, right? That's individualism again.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for being here. Yeah, Darcia, I have led corporate trainings where I make a whole room of people in suits sing camp songs.
Great.
Yeah. So, because that's how I think it's the last precept in your book about the heart wisdom. And you just can't get to that place where people are, right? Because if you're in a business setting, everyone has their ego up on high alert. And so there's just no way we're going to come up with any creative solutions or even learn anything until we've played together. And I have another one where I make everyone make sounds like an animal. They have to close their eyes and try and find their little team that is the same animal noises.
I love it. Great.
Um, and people are always really skeptical at first, but then I always get really good feedback, at the end because we're wired to play. Actually, it feels really good.
That's right.
Feels really
Wow.
good. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I so appreciate you bringing that up. And then, a few years ago, I also I did an event with Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote, the big famous book about trauma healing. And he said the exact same thing, play is the answer. And so it's, all the trauma scientists agree, like they all agree. It's play. It's play, it's play, it's play. Yeah.
A child feels well if they're playing. And that if they're not playing, they're either afraid or they're sick. Because it's normal for young children to play.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
Yeah. So if we could take a question from folks and then we'll wrap up.
I think you also had asked me which was my favorite precept.
Oh yeah. Please share. Please share.
Yeah. So I like number 3, courage and fearless trust in the universe. And I like that because we are here, to learn. We are here to flourish. We are here to enhance one another. And if we screw this world up, the Hopis say this is a fourth world. We're kind of making a mess of it again. There'll be another world. We'll come back in some other way, because we're never not going anywhere. Our quirks, our genes, all our elements will go into the next generations and will be part of the whatever is created, whatever comes about, whatever evolves, right? So let's be here fully in our uniqueness. We all have a gift to share, many gifts, and just to be calm about that and to share, to get back to that and be confident that whatever we do, it's going to foster the seeds of a better world.
I love that so much. I'm glad you shared your favorite. I wasn't sure if you had a favorite. That's
Yeah.
perfect. So I hope that we're all feeling inspired to put this into practice. I'm feeling more courageous, Darcia. And I think it is important to try and maybe reduce the anxiety by knowing that things will just continue, and there's other things possible. I sometimes worry that we get frozen with fear when
Yeah.
we read the headlines.
Yeah. And we have to trot out our whatever works for us to calm ourselves down. So maybe it's deep breathing, maybe it's tapping, maybe it's singing, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's breathing and looking or lighting a candle and praying. Maybe it's walking outside and talking to the tree and asking for help, so.
Thank you so much. Let me pause this on LinkedIn. So, you're getting so many comments of gratitude in the chat, Darcia. So, make sure you save the chat if you want to read through them again. And if anyone wants to save the chat now so that you have all of these resources, please do that. Thank you for your collective energy, everyone, and your great comments, spoken and in the chat. And I am feeling hopeful that we can each make this ripple out and make choices this week to be more relational and to bring the kinship worldview into practice. So Darcia, just thank you so much for the work that you do and for sharing it with us today.
My pleasure, and blessings on everyone. May your heart be your guide. May you be open to the universal energies that give us the flow towards flourishing and love.
Thank you, Darcia.